as planned. Now, they fled into Uganda at the height of the post-election violence. Thousands of Kenyans now considered the forgotten lot. Are they Kenyans or have they become Ugandans?
Well, 7 years down the line, these people may well be the nowhere people.
6 years ago, the small Ugandan border town of Tororo saw what is perhaps the most activity it had in a while. The view of the Ugandan horizon was interrupted by a mushrooming tent city. And United Nations officers helped border officials process the details of occupants of these tents. Over 7,000 Kenyans from all over the Rift Valley and Western Kenya had fled across the border. It was early January and the post-election violence was at its fiercest. 6 years ago, I visited these Kenyans. In one tent, looking lost and alone, I met a young Emma Wambui. She was 27 years old at the time. Right before the violence, she had lost her eyesight. Back then, she told me of a horror that she had lived through, multiplied by the fact that she couldn't see.
It was so sad and I was so confused. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. The gunshots was so scaring and I was just like, I didn't know where to go.
She and many other tragic cases of forced displacement, murder and rape were the reason that, at least in 2008, many Kenyans believed that intervention by the International Criminal Court was necessary. 2 years later, on the 15th of December 2010, the names of 6 Kenyan leaders were read to the public, being charged with rape and murder, forcible transfer, persecution and other inhumane acts. A lot has changed since. 6 years later, Emma and I meet again. She's doing a lot better now.
After KTN aired my story, I was able to receive some donors, or should I say donors or sponsors, Sightsavers International.
Emma's story is an inspirational one. After coming back to Kenya and through the help of various NGOs, she learned how to teach the disabled. In 2013, the girl who was a victim of electoral violence won a seat as the National Alliance Party's County Assembly nominee for Nakuru. She now fights for the rights of the disabled. But not all stories turned out like Emma's. John Joroge walks his wife into their little hut early in the afternoon. It's a perfect time to give their little one a bath. Their baby is almost a year old. He is among a generation of Kenyan babies born in refuge in Uganda. They live in the Kiriadongo refugee camp in western Uganda, having fled across the border at the same time that Emma did.
Wakimbizi ambao wakati huwa tuko mahali hapa, kuna wale wanaitwa refugees na kuna wale asylum seekers walikuja baada ya sisi kufika mahali hapa. Jumla tuko kama watu 1,500.
Their home doesn't look at all like a refugee camp, more like a hut in a small countryside hamlet. But everyone here is a Kenyan refugee or asylum seeker.
Jina yangu ni John Wanjala na Mayengo.
Ninora na Afula.
Kwa majina naitwa George Wanyeke Ndungu.
Jina ni Melon Wamboi.
Na tukajipata kwamba wakang'oa nyumba zetu, ng'ombe tukachukuliwa, tukapaki bure, wakang'oa manyumba, kila kitu.
Tukaletwa hapa Kiriadongo.
Tungekuwa tumeendelea katika inji yetu sana, lakini kwa ajili ya inji ya kigeni tunaishi katika maisha ya shida.
Tuweze kuona vile tunaweza rudishwa inchi yetu.
Many of them tried to go back to their homes in Kenya, but found their land occupied by aggressive locals. So now they live here, a lush green farmer's paradise that masks a deep sorrow.
Hata iwe kesho ama kesho kutwa, tuko tayari kuondoka. Kwa sababu mahali hapa hatuwezi tukaendelea sana. Kwa sababu mahali inji ya kigeni huwezi ukafanya mpango na ukachichenga na watoto wetu kuelimisha inakuwa vigumu.
Yesterday, they were the face of a violent conflict in Kenya, forced out of their homes because of their tribal identity. Today, they have no identity, unable to go back home and yet to be accepted as Ugandans.
Ningependelea kama Mungu anaweza saidia watukumbuke turudishwe nyumbani.
We tried to reach the Ministry of the Interior for comment about whether the government planned to settle these people back in Kenya. By the time of the airing of this report, we had not received a response.
The persons, those people who are still in Uganda, I would say no. Yeah, there is no justice up to now.
None of these people have even contemplated seeking justice for the wrongs committed against them in 2008. The ICC cases are far from their thoughts. They're busy trying to fend for themselves. At any rate, outside of the ICC, there have been a handful of local cases prosecuting suspected perpetrators of crimes during that period. One person has been convicted of a crime related to that period in the 6 years since.
There were so many people who are involved in the post-election skirmishes of violence. And to just handpick a few and decide that these are the ones who are going to carry the burden of the cross, I think it is not fair.
These men, women, and children are now the face of a question that has yet to be answered. If the cases at the International Criminal Court fail, what alternatives do they have in seeking justice? I pose this question to Emma. Her response looks beyond the sense of victimhood that those who experienced violence feel.
Forgiveness is one powerful thing. The moment you forgive and forget, and you begin a fresh life all over again, that is the moment you get that inner strength, and that is the moment that you begin to embrace even your enemies, even your rivals, even your opponents.
But then again, Emma has always been the sort of person who saw beyond her own pain.
Out of all of the people that we've interviewed here, she is the first who says that she is ready to forgive those who committed those atrocities in Busia, chasing her and her family out of her home.
I'm a Christian, and the first thing I do is forgive them just as Christ forgave us. I forgive them totally, and I just hope that if they also forgive us and are ready to accept us back.
Somewhere in Kenya, there's a woman who has forgiven her enemies. But somewhere in Uganda, there are people who haven't even been given the chance to come back home and face their enemies, much less forgive them. John Alanamu, KTN.